Okay, this is lecture number 35 from this book here, Best of the West in Art, Movie, Music, and Books by me, Pete Rogers. Basically, your liberal arts college degree in one book. We're on page 185. I'm going through the best health, nutrition, medical books ever written. Okay, so this is number 32, Toxic Legacy, written by Stephanie Seneff. And she's a PhD from MIT, very intelligent lady. She was most concerned about the relationship between glyphosate, which is in Roundup, it's a herbicide, and its association with autism. And she's real smart. She went through all these papers. She's been sort of chasing after this for a long time. And she, figured out things like glyphosate is glycine phosphate. There's a little more to it than that, but it's basically like a glycine amino acid. The smallest amino acid whose only side chain is hydrogen. Okay, such that small side chains enable it to fit into molecules where you need extra space because you want a small side chain, like in the enzyme active site for a reaction, or like twisting a triple helix. You want small side chains so you can twist a triple helix, three proteins, fibrils wrapped around each other tight. Anyways, she points out that what appears to be happening is the glycine phosphate the glyphosate is switching out for glycine in these proteins and disrupting their function because they don't fold correctly when you got that additional phosphate group on there instead of just the glycine. With its hydrogen. Anyways, so she also talked about how toxic it is. It's super toxic. They used to claim it's not toxic because it doesn't specifically block the enzyme systems of human enzymes. It's more like the shikimate pathway of bacteria. But it initially was like an antibiotic. It disrupts your gut flora. It increases your risk of leaky gut. It increases your risk of fatty liver. Increases your risk of diabetes. It's an excitotoxin, increases activity in the NMDA receptor for glutamate in your brain, the calcium channel. It's bad in numerous ways. And she tracks it down real tight. Her book kind of reminds me of Martin Paul's book. He wrote about the NO cycle, nitric oxide peroxynitrite cycle. She's writing about the glyphosate cycles, but they're both these long biochemistry books with small print and almost no pictures. So they're a bit of a pain in the ass to read, but they're both brilliant works, okay? The other thing people say to me is something like, well, she doesn't really know nutrition well. And I'm going to tell you, no one knows nutrition well, okay? It is not taught to PhDs. It is not taught to MDs. So some people say, well, how could I recommend all these people that don't know nutrition well? Because no one knows nutrition well. She's doing genius level work on the biochemistry of glyphosate and its toxicology. Martin Paul did genius level work on the no cycle. Anthony J did genius level work on estrogen chemistry. So you got to take from people what they're going to give you, okay? So there it is. It's a magnificent book. And you know what? She's got lots of lectures. You just go to YouTube. You can watch tons of her lectures. And, she's got all her slides there, too. I think she even has a website where you can look at her slides. Okay, Diagnosis Mercury by Jane Hightower. This lady had all these yuppies in San Francisco area that were becoming demented in their 40s, and nobody knew why. And they would test them like they would test their blood and their urine for mercury, but that's not a good way to test for mercury because it gets out of the blood real fast. And so they were getting false negatives. And she figured out you got to test their hair as well. And she called brain fog, she called it fish fog. Most of her patients, she simply got them to stop eating fish and the dementia would go away. That's why, all these stupid idiots always tell me, I get all these comments, oh, I heard fish is good for your brain. I go, yeah, if you're freaking stupid and you want to make yourself demented, okay, eat all that mercury, all that fried crap, all that high fat. Look at, typical fish, salmon, it's 50% protein, 50% fat, It's impossible for food to be any good if it's 50-50, okay? That's just definition of stupidity. You want like 80-10-10, 80% carbohydrate, 10% fat, 10% protein in your overall diet. How are you going to achieve that with such a high-fat food, okay? And with so much animal protein? You're not going to. All right, well, anyways, that was the main point of her book. A little bit more than that about mercury toxicity, but the best guy to learn about mercury toxicity is Boyd Haley. I also wrote about it pretty extensively in my book on prevent and reverse dental diseases, and I put that as number 40 here. Okay, let's continue. Unsafe in any meal. This lady, Renee Dufault, PhD, real smart lady. She had a lot of work in food toxicology, and she said high fructose corn syrup is like a terrible thing. They would purify it by pushing it through a chloralkali vat and it would put mercury into it. And then they would advertise high fructose corn syrup as a preservative, but they wouldn't mention the reason it's a preservative is because mercury would kill everything, so you're not going to grow mold in the food. So they always put this stuff in processed food. The typical other fungal inhibitor in processed foods are succinate dehydrogenase inhibitors. So it's another mitochondrial poison. Mercury is a mitochondrial poison, okay? This stuff is poison. Shouldn't eat any processed food. None, not one thing. So that was her book, Unsafe in Any Meal, talking about how these processed foods have so many toxic chemicals in them. And the emphasis was on mercury. But devil's poison, how fluoride is killing you. This guy, Dean Murphy's a dentist, real smart guy. He went through all the paper, hundreds of papers on showing what a poison fluoride is. It's amazing. It's rat poison, okay? It's the strongest electronegativity in the whole periodic table of elements. It's in the vertical column of the halogens. All the halogens kill stuff. That's what halogens do. You know, they're just intense electron stealers, meaning oxidants, because they want to complete their octet for their outer electron orbital. And they just steal an electron, they don't give it back, and it messes up, causes chain reactions, free radical reactions. The halogens, the reason you prep the skin with ChloraPrep, chlorine, or you sterilize a pool with chlorine or bromine, or you sterilize the skin with iodine, is because it's freaking toxic. And fluoride's way more toxic than the chlorine or the iodine. So anyways, he wrote a magnificent book about all the problems with it. This guy's book was also very good. John Yeomiyamis, hard to say. He showed that it increases the risk of cancer, and he showed the mechanism by which it'll cause autoimmune disease by intercalating itself into proteins and replacing hydrogens and then disrupting the shape. Disrupts collagen too, so it's going to increase your risk of spine disease. I've written about that in my books about spine disease. Ischemic spine is the most common cause of back pain. Anyways, these are excellent books on fluoride. I read like about 5-6 books on fluoride. These are the two best ones. There's other good ones too, but these are the best. They're real intelligent. They get to the point fast, and actionable information to understand how bad fluoride is. Okay, Solving the MS, Multiple Sclerosis Mystery by Hal Huggins. He's a genius dentist. He's one of the greatest dentists who ever lived. He's the top two. I think he's actually the best one. And he basically started taking out amalgams and curing patients of MS. Their disease would stop progressing. He goes through the whole mechanism of it, going back to the work of Patrick Storterbrecker. Oh yeah, I included Storterbrecker's book here, Mercury Poisoning from Dental Amalgams. It was such a brilliant book. It was written back like around the early 1980s. This guy's Danish. The book was translated into English, but I was in awe of it. It was so beautiful, so magnificent. And I can tell you, the best medical health and nutrition books are always written by old guys. 99% of the good medical books are written by old guys. I mean, there's some exceptions. Jane Hightower is a woman. Stephanie Seneff is a woman. Renee Dufault's a woman. Yeah, that's true. But what I'm getting at is an old guy doesn't give a rat's ass. You get a young guy, let's say a guy who's 40. Usually anybody less than 40, they don't know anything. I've never in my whole life, not once, and I've been to many thousands of medical lectures, not once have I ever heard anybody less than 40 give a medical lecture worth of crap, okay? They just don't have enough experience to know much. It's just, just how it is. Anyways, an old guy, also a young guy when he's up and coming, he's got to make friends. He's got to build allies. He doesn't want to get denied tenure. He wants to get accepted to be partner at his job. So he has to kiss a lot of ass, and he's going to be scared to say anything out of the ordinary. Whereas you get an old guy, better yet, in his 70s, I'm just 63, but you get somebody, the older they get, the more they're going to tell you because they don't care. They're sort of pissed off. They've been ignored their whole career, most of them, and so now they just want to spill the beans as their legacy, okay, and tell the truth and do something useful. So this guy it was just a beautiful, magnificent book, Mercury Poisoning from Dental Amalgams. He go, so this showed the problem here, 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 and here. And you might ask about this, but then we did this, this, and this. Then you might ask about this, and then we did this, this, and this. It's a tour de force, magnificent book, okay? You'll see it's got crappy little printing, crappy little drawings, but it's brilliant. So I loved it, Patrick Storterbrecker. That's why he's in the top 50 books or whatever. All right, my own book about dental diseases. There's nothing like my book because I know all the neuroanatomy really well. I know the neurologic diseases really well. And I can tell you, they talk about things like trigeminal neuralgia. All these patients going for craniotomies for brain surgery. He's like, did you check in their mouth? The most common cause was, mercury amalgams. And root canals can cause these problems too. Look at the teeth. And if the teeth aren't the problem, fine. Then consider, doing a craniotomy if you need to. But to do a craniotomy for no reason when you could have just pulled the tooth is pretty stupid. This book here by Christopher Exley is a great book about aluminum. His nickname is Mr. Aluminum. He spent his whole life researching it. Brain Fables by Alberto Espay. I thought it was a good book. Don't get me wrong. I actually think the Parkinson Plan is better, okay, on Parkinson's. But Brain Fables was good. I like the way he pointed out how much brain research is all BS just done to make money, and the studies are stupid. And what he basically said, there's not one type of Parkinson's. There's a whole bunch of different things that cause Parkinson's, and the patients symptomatically are different as well. And you need to subcategorize them, otherwise you're not going to know what treatment works best for each of the individual subsets of it. Also, this book here, Garbage Collector by Robert Gamal, about dentistry was magnificent. He's another old guy. I don't know how old he is. I'm going to guess he's about 70 years of age. And he just tells the truth about anything. His website is great. It's the best dentistry website. It's called something like realdentalinfo.com. Okay, the IAOMT is a very good dental site as well. That's IAOMT.org. That's International Academy of Medical and Oral Toxicology. They also have a good YouTube channel, IAOMT. And so you can see their videos. Okay, and like I said, the dental videos are funny because lots of these guys are kind of herky-jerky dentists. They all got mercury poisoning, so they're real jittery. And most of their video quality stinks. Their sound quality often stinks. Their slides often stink. I kind of laugh at them. The dentists are a bunch of screw-ups, but some of them are brilliant too. The dentist, I think his name was Murray or something. He was brilliant on mercury. Boyd Haley was brilliant on mercury. Hal Huggins was great. And there's a few other ones that are really good too. On root canals. They got the real guy who wrote the book on root canals. It was a great book too. And he gave a great lecture about it. So anyways, it was worth time going over there. I'll just finish up this page here. Alzheimer's Turning Point by Jack Delatorre. He's the guy who tied off the carotid arteries in mice, and then the brain on the same side would become atrophic, and the mouse, middle-aged and older mice would be demented 2 months later. That's a great book, Alzheimer's Turning Point. That's the vascular hypoperfusion theory of dementia. Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills by Russell Blaylock. Brilliant book. His father died of Parkinson's, and he felt it was from these excitotoxins. He talks about the original work of Cragg Olney going back to the 1960s, where he figured out that glutamate and monosodium glutamate were excitotoxins. All that matters in monosodium glutamate is the glutamate. Is a major excitotoxin, which means it overstimulates the cell, and if the cell can't meet its metabolic demands, it dies. Okay, and then the other guy who figured out a lot of this stuff too is Martin Pall. He's like, you EMF the shit out of a neuron, you know, holding your cell phone to your head a prolonged amount of time, you're going to be losing brain cells potentially because you're opening up voltage-gated calcium channels. You're basically, a cell phone is an excitotoxin to your brain, okay? You put aspartame in the food, it's an excitotoxin. Glyphosate, it's an excitotoxin. There's plenty of stupid people. They're drinking diet soda pop with aspartame, then they're eating non-organic food, you know, fast food, processed food, and then they're talking with their cell phone next to their head, then they're stressed out, they're sleep deprived, and they drink caffeine. Those are all excitotoxins to your freaking brain. And then you eat a high-fat meal, making your brain cells hypoxic. Then you eat salt, vasoconstricting your brain some more, plus the stress, the caffeine, the sleep deprivation, elevating catecholamines and cortisol. Cerebral vasoconstrictor, you're dropping brain blood perfusion with caffeine like 20%. You see the recipe for disaster. If a brain cell cannot produce adequate ATP to meet its metabolic demands, its plasma membrane, inner leaflet phospholipid, phosphatidylserine flips into the outer leaflet. That's called phosphatidylserine externalization, and that's a signal for the microglia, the big monster macrophages in the brain, the guard cells, the sentinel cells, to eat that neuron, to kill it. Because you want to kill it and eat it as a form of apoptosis, programmed cell death for recycling, before it were to go into frank cell death, where its plasma membrane would lyse, its inner chemicals would be spilled all over the place and cause a big mess. That's harder to clean up. But you see what I'm saying is, when a neuron goes hungry, can't make its energy, microglia eats it. So you're eating your brain. You're eating your brain cells. You do that every day for a couple of decades, you're stupid. Most Americans, Westerners, are cognitively slow in their 60s. I got internal medicine doctor friends tell me every single one of their patients over 60 is mentally slow. And you can see all the things brewing up here. High-fat diet-induced hypoxia. High-sodium diet-induced hypoxia. All these excitotoxins. And then right when the poor, I joked about it, it's like owning a slave and, you know, whipping them with a whip on the legs, whipping their legs over and over, whip their legs, and then you tell the slave, run faster, run faster. And the slave's like, how the F can I run faster when you're whipping the crap out of my legs? Well, that's what you're doing. You're giving them all these mitochondria inhibitors, statins, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, metformin, fluoroquinolones, Tylenol, beta-lactams, aminoglycosides, antipsychotics, diuretics, your thiazides, your your furosemide, your cyanide, cyanocobalamin, your flex. You've got all this stuff inhibiting your poor mitochondria, plus the heavy metals from your fluoride, from your processed food, your glyphosate's a mitochondrial inhibitor, your cadmium's a mitochondrial inhibitor, your atrocine's a mitochondrial inhibitor. How the heck is your neuron going to make enough energy to meet these accelerated demands induced by stimulants? Excitotoxins are stimulants. And then you're making them hypoxic too with the high-fat meal. You're killing your neurons. You're killing your brain cells. You're making yourself stupid. And, I've explained all of this stuff, shown you the Peter Rogers, MD, supply and demand theory of neurodegeneration. I've made it clear to you. Okay, I can tell you, I'm the best in the world for explaining neurodegeneration. I give you all these free lectures. I wrote a book about it, Food, Mood, and IQ. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, here's another really good book, Fat, Stressed, and Sick by Catherine Reed, PhD. Her daughter had autism, and she is a biochemist, a PhD biochemist specializing in proteins. And she's like, holy crap, MSG increases the risk of autism. MSG and MFG. Nowadays, it's mostly MFG, manufactured-free gluten. It's the same thing. All that matters is the glutamate. And she basically, had to get her kid off the processed foods, off anything that contained MSG, and her child made a recovery. It was a mild autism. Child made a full recovery. She's got all the videos pre and post. She's a real smart lady, a real good book. She's got good videos on the internet as well. She has good TED Talk. Catherine Reed, PhD, Fat, Stressed, and Sick. Explaining Unexplained Illness. This guy, Martin Pall, is a genius. He's a Caltech physicist and biochemistry professor at a medical school. Took a sabbatical, and all he did all day long was read all the papers about nitric oxide, peroxynitrite. Now, I know everybody that listens to nutrition videos and knows Caldwell Esselstyn, and you think of nitric oxide as a good thing. There's 3 different enzymes that make nitric oxide that are relevant. There's eNOS, E-N-O-S, endothelial nitric oxide synthase. That's the good one. That's the one that makes it to dilate your arteries, to dilate your Johnson, for making the two-back beast. Wonderful. Okay, but there's another type of nitric oxide synthase. That's called iNOS. I stands for inducible. The eNOS and the nNOS, they just come on briefly, on and off, on and off, on and off, little tiny amounts of nitric oxide. But the iNOS is inducible, meaning that it's upregulated in the context of neuroinflammation. And when iNOS gets activated, it stays on a prolonged amount of time. It makes tons of nitric oxide. The basic scenario is, let's say you got leaky gut, meaning you'll also have leaky blood-brain barrier. Bacterial endotoxins go through the blood up to the brain. They contact the outer surface of the brain. The microglia have pattern recognition receptors bind to the bacterial endotoxins. LPS from gram-negative bacteria, LTA, which is lipopolysaccharide, LTA, lipoteichoic acid from gram-positive bacteria, and they go, incoming bacterial invasion, aruga, release detoxification chemicals to sterilize the vicinity. And the iNOS goes on and releases tons of nitric oxide. It'll combine with superoxides, form peroxynitrite, a very powerful oxidizing agent, and it'll just kill stuff. Because its idea is to kill the invading bacteria. But it's also inadvertently having collateral damage, killing adjacent neurons. And if you do that every day or for decades, which most people do in the Western world, you lose all these brain cells, you become stupid. One of the things I do is I'm also a neuroradiologist. I look at tons of brains, many, many thousands, 100,000 brains I looked at. And I can tell you, what I see by far most common in demented brain is shrunken atrophic brain. I mean, the brain is shrunk because you're losing all these neurons. It's just called brain atrophy. Okay, who's next? And by the way, Explaining the Unexplained Illness, all about the no theory. In the last chapter of this book, in the last chapter of my book on chronic fatigue, Prevent and Reverse Chronic Fatigue, I got it around here somewhere. I just published, just came out a week ago. I go how to counteract all these problems. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can't counteract all of them, but if you counteract enough of them, you got a good chance to stop the disease from continuing its positive feedback loops, its vicious cycles. Okay. And I was proud because this guy, he knows biochemistry. I usually don't admit somebody knows biochemistry better than me, but he does. He's fantastic at biochemistry, this guy. He's brilliant. He's a genius, okay? There's some people who are just great at biochemistry, and they do it all the time. They're magnificent at it. He is magnificent at biochemistry, this guy. Okay, but he doesn't know nutrition. He doesn't know toxicology. So he knows, actually, he does know a lot of toxicology. He's super smart, this guy, but he doesn't know nutrition. I can definitely say that about him. I actually talked to him on the phone one time. He's really nice. Anyways, in my later lectures, if you watch my lectures from that book, Prevent and Reverse Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, I'm going to be going into his pathway. I made previous videos, too, about his pathway with regard to congestive heart failure. He wrote a 55-page paper about how the no-oh-no pathway is the main component of congestive heart failure. And it's a brilliant paper. It's a great paper. But anyways, like we know that Baxter Montgomery, we know that Robert Osfeld figured out how to reverse congestive heart failure. Okay? And so I'm going to talk about all that stuff too. And Kempner had done it many decades ago. Next book, Tripping Over the Truth by Travis Christofferson. It was a magnificent book. It talks about 3-bromopyruvate being a very promising chemo agent, and it got squelched in the clinical trials phase, which often happens when a good promising drug comes along. Oh no, we don't want to cure this stuff. I'll let you read it for yourself. More importantly too, he talked about the difference between the metabolic theory of cancer, which is the Warburg effect, which is the most common cause of cancer, versus the SMT, somatic mutation theory, and how the somatic mutation theory was basically largely disproven by the Genome Atlas project. Basically, they didn't find consistent patterns of mutations to explain cancer. And it ain't just one or two mutations. It's a whole new way of life, switching from aerobic to primarily anaerobic metabolism, burning like 100 times more glucose. That's why the fluorodeoxyglucose glucose-based PET scans are positive, because the cancer takes up 100 times as much glucose, so you can see it. Okay, the last book for today would be Radical Remission. So I do think Tripping Over the Truth. He's a really good writer, Travis Christofferson. I think he's got like a master's degree in biochemistry, something like that. He did an excellent job writing this book, Tripping Over the Truth. Radical Remission by Kelly Turner. I think she's a PhD too. She was working at one of these cancer centers. I think it was Sloan Kettering, one of these cancer centers out east. I'm not sure which one it was. And she noticed some patients had really prolonged survival from metastatic cancer. And so she started to study these patients. She studied what they did. She read all the case reports. She went and drove around and interviewed about 100 of them. And she found consistent patterns of what they usually do, like eat a plant-based diet, maintain their stress levels, manage their stress. They're often religious. Later on, she wrote a second book called Radical Hope or something, and then she found they exercised a lot. Anyways, they manage their own care. They listen to their doctors, but they make the decisions for themselves. Like a typical story was a patient with prostate cancer. He would check his PSA, then make a change in his behavior, and then a month later check his PSA, see if it went up or down based on his change in behavior. If it was improving, he'd keep doing that or do it more. If it was getting worse, he'd stop doing that. So he was running the show to a large extent. Anyways, excellent book. She's got some online videos as well. So does he, Travis Christofferson. All of these people have online videos, so you're more than welcome to watch their videos. You can learn a lot from them. Anyways, that's it for today. I hope you found that helpful.